Welcome to Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm your host, Curtis Smith. Every week on this podcast, we talk about all things mental health, sometimes stress or anxiety. Perhaps you're burned out. Well, this is the podcast for you. We sit down with the wonderful counselors at Crosswinds Counseling and have a great conversation every week. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm Curtis Smith, your host. It is good to be back on the podcast with Brendon Lengacher. Brendon, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We're talking about a topic today that, I don't know, if you had said to me, do you think you'll ever talk about this topic on the podcast? I think I would have said no. I can't imagine one day on the podcast we're going to talk about video games.
Leave it to me to be the one to do that.
But that's what we're talking about today, video games. Brendon, why are we talking about video games today on a mental health podcast for Crosswinds Counseling?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of kids, and video games are something that have been very popular for a very long time.
Sure.
And they continue to remain very popular. And so that tends to be a point of conflict that I see between parents and kids as they come into counseling. How much time do I get to play video games? Why do you think it's bad that I play video games? Why do you have to play video games all the time? Why do you want to do that? Those sorts of things. So It's a big topic in counseling.
Yeah, I would say it's a big topic outside of counseling too. Like this is just a point of strife between parents and kids, has been for, 30, 40 years probably now, right? I've been on both ends of it. As a kid, I played a fair amount of video games, and I think my parents were frustrated by that. I think especially because I was kind of in the early phases of video games becoming really popular. I was playing an Atari 2600. You're laughing. But, when Nintendo first came out, that was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I remember playing Pac-Man and this really primitive basketball game and golf game on the Atari 2600, which I've gone back now and looked at, and they're just awful. They're just terrible games that when I was like 8 or 9, I thought were the greatest things on the planet.
That's what we just call classics.
Classics, right. That's the right way to say that. So I've been on that side of it. And as a parent, my wife and I have seen our 3 boys probably spend more time than we wish they would on video games. So even outside of the counseling world, I think this is something that parents and kids have been struggling with and working through for many years. So let's talk about it. How can the two sides come together a little bit more and have a little less friction over the topic of video games?
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. I would say, let's start with some of the benefits. So they've done a lot of research over time because how prevalent video games have become. And some of the research shows that there are some baseline social skills that can be built because, especially as games have advanced, you have to communicate more with the people you're playing with. We've also seen benefits in working specific parts of the brain. So parts of the brain that are going to help with focus, memory, spatial reasoning, being able to estimate that skill. They've seen growth in gray matter in people who play video games that specifically work those skills and those parts of the brain when they're playing the game.
Wow. So I think the first hurdle, it sounds like, is for parents to maybe see some of the value in video games and not see it as exclusively a waste of time or some silly endeavor or some escape from the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be those things, and there's some healthiness there even. But you're saying there's real tangible skill that can come out of it. And as you were talking about that too, I was thinking, and those skills align with a world that's becoming more virtual, right? Like we're doing many more things through the computer and virtually, so the skills that you're getting there, the way you communicate with somebody on a headset or through a computer screen, actually does transfer into the real world a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think of some of the other pieces, it increases cognitive flexibility, and it's shown that decision making in not necessarily high-stress situations, but it shows that people who play games are able to make decisions quicker, and they've got better objectivity when they are making those decisions. And so we think about, as advanced as technology is becoming, how much it's in the workplace. People have to be able to switch between tasks. They have to problem solve. They have to be able to communicate effectively and quickly as our world speeds up, and video games provides an opportunity for all of those things to grow.
Interesting. Talk to me about that kind of escapism mentality of it too. I think long before the video games were as sophisticated as they are now, like I remember playing that primitive basketball game. I didn't feel like I was making a lot of split-second high-stress decisions, but it definitely was serving as kind of a escape from school or whatever else was going on in my life, and wanting to just kind of dive into the world of the video game and get good at it. So there is some benefit to that, right? Obviously you can take it too far, but there is some stress or anxiety relief or release that comes with getting into the video game world, right?
Yeah, when we think about one of the primary ways that it can be stress relief, it's just simply a switch of topic. We could kind of call it that way. It's a switch from one thing to another. And they found good benefit in helping improve focus and memory by taking breaks. And so video games can be a really good break in that regard. But on the flip side, as you talked about, we can have that escapism piece. And so I think, especially as video games have progressed, there's almost more opportunity for escapism to happen, because when they've done some of the side-by-side looks at how dopamine is increased through video game use, that can be something that's really good. It can help you calm down, but you can get lost in it if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of parents will have frustration around video games, because it seems like their kids are just trying to get away. And I mean, it can cause problems. We'll see kids not do their chores. We'll see them not finish homework. And I think that's where we want to pursue things in moderation.
Sure.
And for parents, if we can have that balanced understanding that there are some good things, there are certain ways that we can go about making sure that it's moderated well, that you're getting the full benefit of it, and it's not taking anything away from your kid then.
Yeah. So obviously we've been talking mainly from the parental viewpoint of seeing some benefit in the playing of video games. Let's flip it. When you're working with kids who are in this struggle with their parents, too much time on the video games, we don't see the benefit, this is driving us crazy. What advice can you give to kids who love to play video games? Moderation is obviously one of them, but what other tips would you give to them to help them kind of come to the middle ground with their parents and make this a better relationship over a topic that can be a hot topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I encourage kids to consider is, as much fun as you have with the video game, part of the reason you can have that type of fun is because your parents are handling a lot of life responsibilities. And so because you are a valuable part of the family, you need to be able to partake in that. And so there's a little bit of a trade-off there. You have to help build that family connection a little bit deeper and help the child understand, there is good things for you to participate in with your family. And oftentimes I leverage it with, it doesn't feel like you're playing video games enough, right? And they'll say, of course not, I want to play more. And so what I encourage them to do is, basic negotiation. If you are willing to do your chores and you're willing to come up with a plan to get your homework done on time, and video games aren't causing strife between you and your parents, you probably get to play more video games. It's not going to be a fight. And when we get down to it, the thing that a kid really wants the most is actually a relationship with their parents. They want to have good, enjoyable relationships. And so when we can help make the connection that video games can be a way to connect with them, but also it can get in the way of that relationship that you want, that's where we tend to strike the balance the best.
Yeah. I have had great success connecting with my kids through video games because I have engaged in games that I don't really like all that much. A few years ago, they got into Fortnite, and I played Fortnite with them. And it's not how I probably would have chosen first to spend my social time, my free time that evening.
Yeah.
But it led to a lot of laughs. It led to them making fun of how bad I was at the game. And I could laugh at myself because I knew how bad I was at the game, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a real connection point there. So I would encourage parents to even try to step into that world and occasionally have fun. One of the most fun things that we've ever done, and my kids still laugh about this, is they got into Tiger Woods golf for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And I went downstairs to our basement where they were playing, and I turned on the Masters theme music, and I sat there and did the play-by-play while they played the game. So I wasn't playing the game. I was just in the room with the cheesy, sappy Masters music on in the background and me doing the play-by-play of the game and just saying ridiculous things but in a hushed golf tone. And they thought it was hilarious.
That's awesome.
And they still, years later, will occasionally bring that up. Do you remember when you did that golf thing? It was awesome. And so I would encourage parents, and I see you nodding along, so I think you agree, to find that connection point and maybe even dive into their world a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's where I often encourage parents to engage in the negotiation process as well by playing with their child.
Yeah.
Because, with something like Fortnite, that can require multiple systems. It can require a lot of different things, internet, all that.
Right.
But there are other games where you can really engage with your child and have a lot of fun. Like I think of a lot of the Nintendo games, like if you're to play Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros, or Mario Party even, like some of these games that are more geared towards in-person connection, that can be a really great way to do things. And it really shows you a lot about your child if you pay attention and it really provides a lot of life lesson opportunities. When you're playing games that are age appropriate with your kids, the games that tend to be more geared towards older audiences are going to have more compelling storylines. And so it's a great opportunity to talk through, okay, why is this character heroic? Why is this villain villainous? Like, why are they the way that they are?
Yeah.
How is this good? How is this bad? There's a lot of good developmental, moral, and character development pieces that you can engage with your kid on. And you can understand them a lot better if you pay attention to maybe the strategies they use in the game or where they get frustrated, where they get excited.
Really interesting. I think it's just like anything else. Moderation is good,
Yep.
but so many things in our lives can be used for good or bad, and video games is another example of that. So, Brendon, thanks so much for talking through video games and how to navigate that space, whether you're a teenager out there and wanting to play more or you're a parent who's a little frustrated with how much they want to play. Good topic to talk about. Brendon, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to go to crosswindscounseling.org. Thanks for watching Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get more of our podcast. And you can comment in the section below. Perhaps you could share what you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. We've got new episodes coming out every week. So we'll see you next time on Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling.